everyone. Welcome back to this new episode of Independent Thought. For today, we are having our second panel on our conversation concerning the Don't Say Gay bill coming out of the state of Florida. So we have four panelists here today to talk about this bill. I'm anxious to hear what everyone has to say about this. First, we're going to do a little bit of intro statements. Just tell everyone a little bit about yourself, what you do, if you're a streamer, what your political leanings are. We're going to start to my right here with Frackle. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so first of all, in the context of this conversation, do have to admit I am a cisgendered heterosexual male, and I have no children. So I do have to specify that I'm not speaking about this from a position of being one of the marginalized communities that's hit by it. So that said, I am a socialist and police abolitionist, and I am a video essayist. I've been shifting away from streaming just because my particular style of content and analysis lends itself better to video essay format than streaming. So that's me. You can find me on youtube.com/Frackle and sometimes on Twitch/Frackle.
All right. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to go down to Fresh Faces, New Ideas. Who is muted?
Still muted because I'm a professional. Yeah, I'm Fresh Faces, New Ideas. I stream on Twitch. I did the YouTube. It's still up if you want to watch my 7-month-old videos. Yeah, you find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Fresh Faces, New Ideas. I do a whole bunch of these panels. I'm Bernie Bro. I am also a cisgender person without children, so I'm not a marginalized group in this discussion. I usually stream during the week. It's going to be more now, from 7 p.m. Eastern onward. So hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope we have another good discussion about this.
All right. Next, we're going to go over to Aston Mac.
All right. How's everyone doing today? This is Aston Mac with Aston Mac TV. Check me out on Twitch. You can also check me out on Twitter. I am a cisgendered Black guy. Got to change it up for this panel. I get to be the little spice in our soup today, huh? But yeah, I basically am a left-leaning, I'm a Black anarchist, so this will be fun. Interested. Oh, and Frackle and I also live in Florida, so there's that.
Yeah. The Florida perspective. All right, and finally, Montreal Player.
Hello, I'm Montreal Player. You can call me Monty, twitch.tv/Montreal Player. I'm Canadian. I've had 3 kids go to public school. I'm homeschooling the last one. My 3 kids that have gone to public school have had gender-oriented classes. And that's it. I don't know. I have a on and off again relationship with streaming, but I love talking to people and getting perspectives and just having nice chats. This was an opportune time. Thank you, Mr. Price, for inviting me. And yeah, I hope we have a good time. I might pepper in some jokes, but they'll be based on serious stuff. Also, gay.
All right.
Yay. Yes.
All right. So let's go ahead and just get into the first topic here. So the Don't Say Gay bill, as it's been commonly called, I think it has a number, HB, something that I'm unfamiliar with at the moment.
1557.
15 there. Thank you so much. That it was just recently signed into law by Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida. It specifies that children under 4th grade should not be learning about sexual orientation or gender identity in a classroom setting. So the question now comes to our panel. How do we all feel about this legislation? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? What are your general thoughts on it? I'm going to start again with Frackle over to my right. What are your thoughts on this legislation?
Sorry, this is the just introductory thing where we get like a short period of time to say?
Yes,
okay.
Please give me your intro statement.
Okay, so this bill there's a lot of problems with it. The chief problem is it is one that only rewards and cultivates ignorance. The only things this bill does fundamentally is create a path for making sure that the classroom teaches the most ignorant version of sexuality and gender identity by creating a path for injunctions if you take objection with anything being taught, but providing no avenue to ask that things do get taught. So it's one that only claws back at what can be taught rather than creating an ability to include education. So that's one of the lenses that I'm going to be looking at this from.
All right. Thank you so much. I guess I should specify these are our opening statements. Try to keep them under a minute. Fresh faces, new ideas. You are next.
Okay, I talked about this a lot yesterday, but yeah, this bill is it's got problems. I don't like it. I think on top of the bill being bad, I think the rhetoric that is designed around it is also very problematic. I think that especially when you consider that some of the most outspoken people have gone into a incredibly crazy statements that are just not legal for some of the things that they're proposing, where they're Lauren Boebert's most recent proposal, or apparently this is something I was just seeing, that there was somebody who went into a Motel 6 in order to grab people who weren't binary in order to take them to a hospital because of something Tucker Carlson said. These bills in themselves are there to push radical ideas because they don't like reality.
Okay. Next, we're going to go over to Aston Mack, our other Florida panelist.
Yeah, so I guess we all know that the substance of the bill is fundamentally like morally bankrupt. I mean, I don't need to go any further than like, why don't we change the LGBTQ bin to why don't we stop teaching about white people until 4th grade? See how much you like that? Because this bill, what this bill does is it fundamentally buys into a narrative that is a false pretense from the offstart, which is that multi-gendered people, that the two gender dichotomy is something that has been natural and ever present, when that's not true. If you go back in history, if you even look at other cultures today, the idea of a two gender dichotomy just doesn't hold up, and we're basically saying none of those people get to exist, which means once again we are basically saying that the rest of the world doesn't get to exist, which is fundamentally the problem with the bill. But what's even more worrisome about the bill, because we all know about the moral bankruptcy, is the actual strategy from the Republican Party. So this bill comes in a suite of bills that have recently been passed. Don't forget, we passed HB 1, the anti-protesting bill. We passed the we can't speak about communism in school anymore, and the CRT ban. So now we're talking about another group of people that no longer gets to be representative. Meanwhile, what does this bill do? It adds power to those previous bills that we're not even thinking about. Giving parents the carte blanche ability to sue schools allows them to open schools up to lawsuits for all of those other bills that they snuck through that you've probably forgot about. And this is where this starts to become an issue, right? And this is what we're worried about when we talk about our institutions are being under attack right now. And that's the angle that I think that we should look at.
All right. Thank you so much. Finally, go up to Montreal player.
You guys are really gonna make me like have to do the counterpoint to this one. Like,
You don't.
fuck.
You don't have
You could
to.
not. You
No,
don't have to.
I
Well,
could
I
not,
had
but I
more
mean,
people
but we
supposed to
need
be on this
contention.
one,
Yeah, I
but-
know. I know. I gotta do this now. All right. Oh, fuck. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. As a homeschooler, all right, who doesn't have access to this kind of thing in Quebec, all right, getting honestly something like what is it called? The Family Empowerment Scholarship, formerly the Gardenier Scholarship, okay, would be fucking awesome. All right. It would be fucking awesome for me. There are reasons I took my last kid out of public school. They have nothing to do with gender classes or whatever. I will say one thing. I will say one thing about it. I find the people who are really like pro progressive issues are really obnoxious about it, right? It just horning in and making sure that you're saying the right rhetoric to your kids. Like, it's fine. My kids are exposed to these kind of ideas and stuff like that, but But man, to just get them when someone else just comes in and gives you their unsolicited opinion about them, it annoys me just on principle. And it wouldn't annoy me about this. Honestly, it annoys me the same way that they'll push hockey on my kids. Okay, we don't like hockey. All right, in this house. I know I'm from Quebec and we're supposed to like hockey, but I don't like hockey, and we get hockey paraphernalia all the time. Okay, and so honestly, if it's up to me, I have the schools banned talking about hockey in class. All right, and that would be the objection. As far as the funding of the bill, man, oh boy, do I have to defend this? All right. Yeah, it seems like basically an attempt to gouge the public school system's budget, right? So you can funnel all that money into private institutions. All right, and you know who loves getting that private money? Homeschooling networks and private schools. All right, specifically Christian ones. All right, specifically Christian ones. All right, and ooh, what an agenda do they have? And yeah, I guess we'll turn around those kind of points. Anyways, those are some preliminary thoughts.
All right, everyone. Thank you for your opening statements. I guess we're now going to go to a more open format. Feel free to address anyone else's opening statements. Aston, I feel like the gears are kind of turning a little bit. I want to hear what you have to say.
I just think that you're gonna get hockey and you're gonna like it. I'm gonna sign your kid up and I'm gonna put him on the little skates and we're gonna run around.
Oh, it's a fucking religion here. Imagine someone told.
Wait, I thought that was what B16 did.
Imagine someone went to public schools. I'm sure someone's done this, right? And they told you your kids have to learn about God. All right, they have to learn about this specific God. Okay, I don't care if you believe it or not. All right, you're doing it. All right.
Isn't that what B16 did? Was require your kids to have to do hockey, or did Jordan Peterson lie about that too?
Okay, I don't know. That doesn't sound right. They're obnoxious with the hockey. It's really a religion, and it's a religion that I don't want to observe.
So, go ahead, Aston. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Frackle.
Okay. Well, so I did want to bring up, speaking of patterns like Aston did, this is just the latest anti-LGBTQ effort by Republican legislatures across the country. There have been 238 anti-LGBT bills this year. There have been a total of 670 since 2018. This one does seem particularly insidious to me because, like I said, it ensures that what is discussed in school only caters to the most ignorant and the most bigoted position, because again, it only allows for the removal of discussion. Now, what this does in effect is it ensures that a generation of at least Floridians will be ill-equipped to understand or navigate or discuss these things unless, specifically taught that by their parents. Now, in a cis-normative, heteronormative society, that means that a large majority will, simply not have the tools to understand these concepts. And I know that it says only up to 4th grade, but it also is extremely vague, deliberately so, about what is age appropriate thereafter. It doesn't just talk about grades 1 through 3. In addition to that, and this is one thing that I take extreme exception to, children who are in grades 1 to 3 actually do learn quite a bit about gender identity and sexuality. It's just that, like racial issues, things that are considered the majority are not considered sexual. Like in racial terms, it's being white is not considered a racialized issue. So talking about whiteness is strange to people. But in this case, they're saying, how many children's movies do have a romantic arc? That is sexuality. You do have gender identities of male and female. Those are gender identities. Doesn't matter that they're cis, it still is a gender identity. And then they have a relationship. That is heterosexuality. But those things are not off the table. You can just talk about them. No one has an issue with it. So this bill is explicitly like creating an avenue for parents to remove discussion of things that fall outside of that. I don't know how many people remember a few years ago when actually several years ago, when a similar sort of line of thinking was against the teaching of evolution in schools and how it should be parental's rights to
When you say years ago, wasn't that like decades ago?
No, that's
No.
coming back. That's coming back.
It's
I think
coming
there
back?
was recently a bill passed. I vaguely remember seeing something there was a state that was pushing for it.
it's been an
No,
ongoing
no.
battle.
No,
but yeah.
no, like literally, if you live in the state of Florida, I grew up here. I went to school
Yeah.
here in high school. In biology class, when they teach evolution, they have to stop and say, the state requires me to tell you that blase, 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 blah. Like,
Yes.
that was back in like 2007. So,
Yeah.
Yo, I'm
Yeah,
so glad I
it's-
never lived in the South. No offense to you.
But like this is the same line of thinking, except this actually it would be as if they had created a legal avenue for people who objected to teaching evolution to sue schools over it, which would have created an even worse climate for teaching science than we have today. And of
Well,
course, it's
so-
similar.
so-
To your point, I do actually. This is something I brought up. This is what I think a lot of these bills, because these bills are all similar. Generally, this new era of like objectively anti-constitutional legislation, anti-first speech legislation that's enforceable by the citizenry basically suing something. When these type of bills pass, you have to realize that like the reason their enforcement mechanism is like that is because they know that if it goes to court, it's going to fail. So the biggest failure the Democrats or any Democratic governor, or honestly like any especially in this bill, if it becomes law for any Democratic voter to not use the bill or build a bill similar to it that does the opposite to prove the absurdity of this. Like for this bill, I would hope somebody, if it became law, would sue a school
is.
for something over
It did
heterosexual.
become
It's
law,
law.
I think. Yeah, it did.
Well, no,
become
but
law.
there's lawsuits on it. So whether it's
So,
whether
so
it's
let me actually jump in here because you're actually making a point, because this is actually a way that the a lot of the school teachers are protesting. They're protesting by removing gender absolutely out of school. So they're taking the exact opposite approach. They're
That's pretty
saying
impressive.
they won't mention husbands and wives. They won't mention any heteronormativity at all. And that is very, very much rustling a lot of jimmies around here. Let me make this.
I think that serves the purpose of the bill, even if it's anger in that direction. All right. Look, if the point is to give more vectors, okay, for people to basically sue the public school system and get this scholarship, okay, so they could pump it into other institutions or other learning networks, okay, then you could easily mobilize. I mean, if it was me trying to take over this shit, right? You could mobilize like a large number of people to go into homeschooling networks or your own kind of like private institutions, okay, so you can control narratives and basically just lock people into your political ideology and your political block, right?
Well,
and if you're planning this over a generation or two, like you could do it, and then you're using public money to do it. It's brilliant. And even if the people who are doing the counter thing, right, like, oh well, heteronormativity is a sexual identity, it doesn't matter as long as you're suing. It works.
So and this is what's important about what's actually being brought up here, because this is part of a Republican funding scheme. Okay, let's be clear about something. The Republicans' ideas are insanely unpopular, and the way that they're able to create, like, think about this: the last guy to shoot up, like, I don't know, Pulse. I don't know, weird coincidence, right? That we're the state that did that, but I don't think that he had any gender etiquette, gender teaching, right? I don't think there was like gendered curriculum in his teaching, and they know this. They know that they're creating a cultural zeitgeist, a clout of misunderstanding that's going to cause that ignorance becomes palpable. It becomes something that actual actions that actually happen, actual actions that fund the Republican Party today. If you see how they're swinging to the alt-right, and you can see that this is just another avenue for them to create more followers. I mean, that's the game, right? Manufactured consent. I mean, that's what Noam Chomsky said.
I want to jump in on that
also-
really quickly, actually, because as Aston was pointing out the last time he was on a panel, there's a lot to be said about how normies perceive the news.
Mhm.
So I, on Instagram, where I do the bulk of my marketing for this show, I have quite a significant followership of normies, and I recently did some polls on there talking about this bill, and I had a few people who messaged me and said that they didn't want their kids learning about sexual orientation and gender identity at that age, and it is, I think, and this is me assuming their perception here, but it appeared to me as if there's this perception out there that learning about gender identity and sexual orientation was somehow learning about like some graphicness, or that they were
There
like
is.
teaching about pornography in school, or they were having
It's
some
not even
explicit conversation where that couldn't be further from the truth.
it's not even that. It's specifically, and let me be clear, they don't think of gender non-conforming people or gay people as actual people. They consider them deviants that have chosen a lifestyle. So
Right.
what they're thinking here is that if you teach a child that gay people exist or multiple genders exist, that their kid will catch the gays. That's what
Yeah.
this is
Literally,
really
yeah.
about. Like they
You
think their
think-
kids are out there catching the gays from their curriculum, and
Do you think if you teach them that, they'll all of a sudden grow sympathy, or they'll it'll click in their minds? Oh, they're fucking humans, right? If they didn't before.
Well,
Because
yes.
and
Yeah,
no,
'cause if-
hold on, really? Because okay, I was scouring the internet for fucking data. All right, okay, that prove that like classes like this actually change people's minds, like as adults or something like that. Because I'll tell you something, okay, I had kids, okay, they all had the class of acceptance, okay, sexual identity or sexual orientations, gender identities, okay, and the kids and their peers, and this is purely anecdotal, okay, but they didn't give a flying fuck. Okay, they didn't give a flying fuck about any of this stuff. If they had bigoted views before, they had them after. Okay, if they were open and accepting before, they were the same way after. Okay, it did not change. Half of them didn't even remember. It's like a class they can snicker in. Okay, really. All right, so I wonder what the effectiveness actually is of these things.
If you're bringing up the anecdotes, I am curious because you're speaking about your children. So how many of your children were accepting before? How many of them were accepting after? And same about bigoted? Because if you're speaking personally, like I want to know.
Okay, okay. As far as my children, we're pretty liberal about things like this in this household, right?
So they're
and
accepting.
in fact, for these, yeah, they're accepting. Okay, and for these kind of topics, this is stuff that we kind of broach at the dinner table or just in passing conversation when we're talking about them. Okay,
Sure.
and the truth is that I probably talk to my kids about these kind of issues 8-9 years old or something. So that's about the range. I think it's like 3rd, 4th grade or something. So
how
hold on,
many?
and I'll give you the flip side, because they do have peers, they do have friends. I've been told that I'm lucky because my children actually talk to us, right, about what's going on, and what they're reporting, okay, is that there's still, even here in Canada, a lot of bigoted people out there, okay, about this kind of thing, even in the densely populated urban area, okay, and you know what, their minds did not get changed by these classes. All right, it has nothing to do with it.
So I want to jump in here because I think that this is a misframing. I think that the idea was, if the idea is that the curriculum was going to magically change the minds of already bigoted people, that is no teacher has those therapeutic skills. That takes cognitive therapy that would take many years. Many races take many years before they're actually taught out of racism.
Right.
So if that was the original, if that's what you thought the goal is, you're wrong. What the actual goal is actually learning about. So when we think about school and we think about the structure of teaching, what we think about is taking the smallest, most like granular form of any form of knowledge and then building on that idea and creating a framework for it. So creating the framework, and this is the thing that the Republicans are afraid of because they don't like this framework, but creating the framework that gender is is a social construct, or race is a social construct. These are the ideas that later become more complicated, and there's much more philosophy, much more ideas, but that's the basis. And that's the thing that you teach when you're very, very young, that gender is just something that it's an identity. It's something that people make up. It's something that people owe their allegiance to. That framework itself allows more people then to obviously accept more differing ideas. The other large thing is, you're talking about data. When we actually talk about how these theories work, is actually a thing called contact theory, right? That's I think Dr. Allport, if I'm correct, like Allport, anyways, sociologist, psychologist guy. Anyways, the idea is that if you're trying to lower the animosity between two groups that are othering each other, you have to follow these kind of steps, and that show to me more impactful. And one of them is bringing concepts back and forth from both sides. Is like it's a big thing, as well as like actually getting these kids together. One of the biggest things that the class does is it allows those non-typical genders, like people that are not considered male or female, people that consider themselves trans, maybe even children that have non-heteronormative sexualities. They get a chance to identify themselves and stand out, and then that contact lowers the bigotry. That's what actually lowers the bigotry, is actually being introduced to somebody that is different than you and interacting with them.
Is this hypothetically or proven?
No, this is proven. This is like this is contact theory.
You got a contact theory. Okay.
Mhm.
And this is like, you can see that populations exposed to these ideas early, or like in school, okay, then have less bigoted views as
Again,
adults.
no, it's more specifically about the thing that I'm talking about, which is the interaction between the two othering groups, and how they interact. And classrooms are a perfect place where you can create those power structures so that they can interact on even playing fields, which is also part of contact theory. And that stuff is what allows the othering to go down. So it doesn't happen unless you're cognizant of it. And then that's what all of this stuff does, essentially.
There's
Well,
also,
I mean, hold on. If they're in the same environment, okay, that created their bigoted views, okay, and then they have little pepperings of idea introduction, okay, it seems like if the environment doesn't change, it'll just still reinforce the,
Right.
whatever they're into, anyways.
So
Right?
that
You'd have to have
isn't what I'm
multiple, like,
isn't
points
what
of
I'm
contact.
describing changing the environment. I'm talking about changing the framework of the school so that it's not heteronormative. Like these classes being able to speak about this stuff openly, that creates an environment that fosters this sort of positive interaction. No.
so I want to two things. First of all, I want to give a personal anecdote, specifically about bigotry. So I was raised in a deeply conservative Christian household, and I was not actually introduced to the idea that being gay was not a sinful, aberrant thing until I was a late into my teens, like 17 or 18. And I do genuinely believe, based on the way that I incorporated that concept, that if I had been introduced to it earlier, I would have disentangled my own bigotry a fair bit earlier, because I was hateful towards LGBT people, straight up. I used gay as a pejorative and meant it straight up. And
When did you start converting?
it was, interestingly, to contact theory. It was after one of my friends came out as gay. I ostracized him, but then I started questioning that and like interrogating my own beliefs further by looking at LGBT literature. And
That seems like a lot more personal, or personal
is.
motivation to explore these ideas than some class in school you don't give a fuck about.
Right. So the thing about it is, I had no framework besides vilifying and demonizing people based on their sexual orientation. I had no concept of gay outside of that. In addition to that, this is the other aspect of this. Even setting aside bigots who you may or may not be able to reach, like it's not a silver bullet, but even aside from them, there is an absolute health benefit to LGBT youths to actually find themselves represented in schools and find not only of themselves, but also of their families. Like if someone is growing up in a household with 2 male parents or 2 female parents or trans parents or what have you, and throughout school, they can't even discuss their family life because, you know, there are a lot of school activities where you have to talk about your family or write about them or where you want to. And if you can't even do that because it violates state instruction, for the teacher to even like look at your or have you talked about this, then you're going to internalize that there's something shameful about you or your family, and you can't even like exist safely.
According to this bill, the school's going to have to tell your parents for you. I mean, when I read the bill, I was surprised at how much of the language was actually about like, we're just going to tell your parents about whatever you're telling us. Okay, we're just going to tell your parents. Also, they have complete access to all the records. So if you come out to like a teacher because you're having a rough time, your parents are knowing immediately.
Right, that's part of the problem. There was amendments put in to try to stop that because there's the potential that there's going to be students who are going to be hurt, and part of it is denying them a safe space, which if they're not considered inclusion or if they don't feel safe, that's going to drive up their suicidality rates. Like one of the leading drivers for LGBTQ plus people is the fact that they don't feel included in that, and just like giving them a safer space, like even the word safe space is kind of goofy. Just like giving them a place where they could be a person drives down suicidality like by like 70%, I believe. It's like insane how ridiculous. That's part of the reason that when the trans bill came across the Utah governor's desk, he vetoed it. He was like, listen, they have incredibly high rates. For us to make a bill that targets one child is ridiculous.
So,
Right.
so
Well,
I want to
if you
jump.
have a okay, you know what? I'm going to say one little thing. If you basically have this environment that makes it hostile, whether you like gays or not, all right, I'm being facetious saying this. It seems like you're creating an inhospitable environment either both ways, right? If you're pro non-heteronormative lifestyles being acceptable, right, then you're appalled, right? But also if you're anti those things being acceptable, you're also appalled. So either way, let's get our kids out of this school. Fuck the public school system. Get that money into private institutions. It works both ways.
No. See, and this is where it's problematic, right? Because that is what's trying to be done. It is an actual attack, and I want to refocus this on that. It's an attack on the institution of education itself. When you remember that, like, as nice as it might sound to like put your kid in private school, 90% of kids graduate from public school. Like 90, it's only 10% of kids, and of that 10%, you can the results are wildly different depending on where you end up and what schools you can afford, and that's the problem, right? This bill isn't about this bill fundamentally attacks the vast majority of our children. It basically allows one group to have authority over another group, and that's the point of this bill. Listen, I grew up in Florida. I grew up homophobic too. I grew up pretty misogynist as well, and I can tell you that a lot of that's engendered by the environment that we're in. When I was young, I was in a very homophobic environment when it came to the school systems. Like the teachers were very, very open about making gay jokes. They were very, very open about making fun of gender. There was very much a lot of like, are you not man enough? Or is this, I remember, matter of fact, I'll never forget in middle school when we actually had the talk, right? One of our coaches was gay, and he had to say the line, yeah, well, AIDS was really prevalent among the gay community. Like, the way you could just hear the weight of the world, because he knew as he was saying that, and as we did, all of us started making fun of gay people and AIDS. Like, that is what the effect of the school system is. It's a wide net. You're getting to spray as many kids as you want with your negative frameworks. Not only to mention, and I need to say this again, this is about a narrative of American exceptionalism that we promote in schools that says that America is like the dominant culture, that we come from a long line of powerful cultures that have these strong traditions of nuclear families and gender normativity. That just isn't true, right? When we learn actual history about all the other places in the world or all the other cultures in the world, we find out that, wow, all these places that we thought were having like moms and dads and kids, like they weren't. They were having dads and kids and moms and kids, or raised by villages, or there are three genders. Like if we go into Thailand, we talk about three genders. If we go into Mexico, we talk about three genders. I think even in the Dominican Republic, I mean, there are tons of cultures out there that were just erasing their existence because we think that gender normativity is icky, because trans kids are weird.
That's actually a great place to segue to the next topic. Does anyone have a closing statement? Because if not, I think that was a perfect segue right into the next thing I want to ask.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
Perfect. So, given all of these bills that are happening across the country right now, including this one in Florida, one in Texas, the one in Utah you mentioned, one in Tennessee, there's some in Oklahoma, in Kansas, in Louisiana. They are happening all over the country, Idaho. Are these GOP lawmakers essentially making our country more dangerous for these young children who are LGBTQ? Again, I want to start off with Frackle. Do you believe that these laws coming across the country are having a measurable negative impact for these young children?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Not just because of the legislation, but also because of the way they're marrying it to rhetoric around the legislation. Like this is culture war bread and butter. We can see hate crimes are massively on the rise, and I'll leave that as my opening statement.
Okay, next we're going to go down to Fresh Faces, New Ideas. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, it's objectively hurting. And then the other thing with this is, like, on top of that, it gives them kind of like an excuse to run trial balloons for like more control for different things that they want. I remember this just happened, and I know we didn't get a chance to talk about the last panel, but like the Lauren Boebert tweet about it is like, I know she's a clown, but it's like an objectively insane thing that is not that far off based on how fast they turned around on this. Like, it is worth mentioning. But yeah, no, this is objectively bad. And the fact that there's already we have one mass shooting for this. I imagine if we parse through some of the other ones, there's probably more than that one. That was just the Pulse one is just the largest one. If the thing at the hotel is true, especially some of the language that they're using, it is very easy to see how this escalates beyond just children to all LGBTQ plus people.
Okay, thank you so much. Next, we're going to go over to Aston Mac.
Listen, if it isn't obvious that this is directly harming people, then I really don't know what to tell you. What this is actually about, again, is remember who this bill is designed to give power. We all know her. She's that really annoying Karen lady that likes to tell you what you are or what you're not supposed to do. Hey, you're not supposed to look left when you turn right. Whatever. She's the one that's going to enter the classroom and see the pride flag, or see that the teacher has a picture of their significant other and they are perceived to be the wrong gender, and complain. We've already seen this in Texas. Matter of fact, we have that lawsuit going against the teacher for celebrating Pride Month. Like, he's gay. What is he supposed to do? Not accept his heritage? But that's the answer. That's the real answer. I want you to pay attention, because I was joking, but that's the answer. They want to cancel out all other cultures besides their own that they see as dominant, normative, and natural, right? That's why you hear all the naturalist arguments. That's why you hear all the traditional arguments. That's where this is coming from, right? And once we can dehumanize that group, we can make the cultural acts like illegal, then we're just a few steps away from making them illegal.
All right, thank you so much. And then finally up to Montreal Player.
Oh, first of all, no, it's not Karen. Her name's Betsy. All right,
Mm,
Betsy
That's
DeVos.
true.
All right.
Hey.
Okay. Their mission is to bring what God's kingdom on earth here. All right. Who is one of DeSantos's biggest contributors? The DeVos family. Okay. What are they trying to do all over the goddamn country? Is it's fucking gouge out public school funds and get them into private institutions, mostly Christian private institutions, and homeschoolers who are out to stop indoctrination. I fucking hate this. I fucking hate this so much. I homeschool my son. Okay, it has nothing to do with fucking indoctrination. When I hear people say homeschool for indoctrination, I'm like, the only one who wants to. Well, actually, I think that's one of your fourth topics. When I hear people saying indoctrination, it's because you want to control the narrative. You want to indoctrinate. Okay, you're just afraid of other people's shit. All right. Anyways, and then these, the Madison Cawthorn types, just like, oh, we're just gonna get people in homeschools. This is exactly what this does. All right. Her name's not Karen. It's literally Betsy. All right. And that family is pushing a lot of cash to make this happen. All right. And no, I don't think it's gonna. I think generally safe to say with this level of zealotry. All right, I don't think it's going to make for a safe world for people. All right, unless they follow the gender sexual norms of that culture, okay, in any way whatsoever. Yikes.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and open up to the full panel here. Anyone can address anyone else's topics, so go ahead and go forth. Frack will go ahead and go first.
Yeah, so I wanted to bring up and this not only is to this discussion, but also kind of builds on what Montreal was asking about. There is actually a study by the Society for Research in Child Development that finds that the more contexts in which transgender and gender diverse youth find support in their gender identity, etc., there is a marked reduction in suicidality, depression, and anxiety than those who don't have those in different contexts. And the contexts they primarily list are home, school, and work. So to the question of, does a bill removing these, this sort of affirmation and discussion and acceptance harm transgender and gender diverse youth? According to this study, absolutely would. And I also, like I said, it really troubles me that it creates an avenue for parents to just object to things legally and just remove discussion. Like even the protests around it about like removing discussion of male and female, that while it is a protest effort, ultimately the conservative position, or proto-fascist position, if you want to use real terminology for what conservatives are these days, is they don't really mind if male and female isn't discussed because it's already cemented as the norm. So just removing discussion of this in school in general ultimately benefits them more than it benefits anyone else. Ignorance is the bread and butter of the Conservative Party. So removing more education is always to their benefit.
I want to address something you just said a little bit here.
Yeah.
I think you were just looking up a study to see exactly, whether or not this would have a profound impact on young children. I don't think you even need to really go down that much of a rabbit hole. You can just take it just at face value. These young children are being told that who they are is a problem,
right?
That who they are is a conflict of the norm, that they shouldn't be even speaking up about what is normal for them in society, that they shouldn't be in school talking about their lived experiences. And I'm not a part of that marginalized group, but as somebody who's been hearing nothing other than like anti-CRT nonsense for the last few months, I can understand exactly what that feels like. It's almost like, yeah, we can't really talk about your history because it's making other people uncomfortable. I'm sorry, why the fuck should I care? I mean, this is my
Yeah.
reality. And the fact that there are groups of people around the country right now who are trying to, again, hammer it just over and over and over again, saying that we can't be teaching this to kids, it's only further otherizing these people who are already struggling, trying to feel normal in our society. Like the reason that we should be having these discussions with children at a young age is because they shouldn't be seen as abnormal. It shouldn't seem strange. It shouldn't seem like they don't exist. They have that problem right now because we haven't been doing this throughout our history. We have the opportunity to change that right now. We need to be going down that path.
There's
I gotta say, I gotta say, as far as this topic and a lot of other topics, I find school, or at least the public school, does a piss poor job. They do a piss poor job at broaching topics that aren't like reading, writing, or arithmetic. It's kind of one of the reasons I took the fourth kid out to homeschool him. I feel like honestly, again, we're very liberal. I feel like our dinner table conversations, okay, and taking them out to field trips for specific things is doing such a better job, okay, at giving this kid, I guess, a broad perspective than the focus than the curriculum, okay. And it's just, I wish, and the other thing is, the other reason I took them out, I know this is very personal, but is that the anxiety or whatever seems to come from school, from the massive amounts of homework, okay, that they get. And so there's a bunch of things that I find school does wrong. Okay. School does wrong. And sometimes there are topics I don't talk to my kids about this, just because you're wasting the time. You're fucking wasting the time. I'll do it for you. Okay. I'll do it for you. I'll do it better. I know a lot of people don't have this kind of access, that kind of education at home, but man, sometimes I feel that for a lot of things, they're just doing a shitty job of talking to the kids about a whole bunch of stuff. And I can understand if you're a parent and you hold other views, that you also probably don't want your kid to talk about these issues until later, right? Or until they're ready. One of the things all right, here's an anecdote, okay, about gender related issues. My kid is like, I don't know, he's like 3-4 years old. He identified himself. He's like, oh, I must be a boy. I have a penis. Dad has a penis. Okay. My grandpa has a penis. All right. We're all boys. We have penises, right? He just grasped the fucking topic. Okay. Just right now, my wife goes out to something, and someone had to horn in and be like, and he's spouting his new knowledge that he just figured out in the last day or two. Someone had to horn in, is like, some boys have penises. Now, I know they meant well and stuff, but I mean, the kid is not ready for this right now. Okay. I'll get to it. All right. I'll get to it. I promise you I'll get to it, but you don't need to be doing these things. He needs to get some references. All right. And then expound on those things. Stop pushing it like beforehand. Now, this is just a weird example from my life. I can see how a lot of parents might feel like, you know what? I don't think this is the time for my kid, okay, to start dealing with certain topics.
so
And you might feel, hold on, that might be like a weird thing. Of course, they're able to deal with this topic at 6 years old or 7 years old, but I don't approach topics with my kids until they're kind of ready, until they're asking questions, and then I try to be honest with them. Right? Same thing with Santa Claus. Same thing with a whole bunch of other things. It's their curiosity they're asking that prompts me on whether or not they're ready to like hear some stuff. So if you're a parent and maybe you have these different views, you might feel like you know what, I just don't think this is the right time for my kid, and I don't like that you get to decide, that someone else gets to decide because of what I perceive as a political agenda.
So really quickly
let me
before I just want
okay.
to say one thing really quickly. There is no need to apologize for using anecdotes. It's perfectly fine. We are not scholars here, so we don't need to be constantly citing
I
several
apologize for apologizing.
academic summaries here. So use all the
Canadian.
anecdotes you want. It's the best way to personalize it. Aston, please go ahead.
I was gonna say a few things and now I fucking forgot. No.
My bad.
Okay, so
Sorry,
what
happens to me all the time.
So I want to give Montreal personally an MVP award because he is just doing everything. He's actually like hats off to you. You're taking a position that you don't necessarily agree with, and you are actually creating trying to create an interesting argument. And boy, are you making it. So I do want to go ahead and say I appreciate that. The problem again here is going to be framing. Like I do have a math and science background, and I can tell you that we don't really teach math that well either. Like it's this is how it is across all topics. This weird
That's an
thing that
understatement.
yeah, this weird thing that we do where we like just because we maybe it's because we're less familiar with the topic and we feel comfortable with math and science. Maybe it's because we buy into the idea that our teachers were perfect at teaching. I don't know what it is, but we do this thing where we like almost put reading and arithmetic and science all on these pedestals as if we haven't been like if us in academic land aren't constantly fighting against public misconception on those topics constantly because they were taught badly. So I don't really buy into the narrative that like we can't teach. Like you're just asking us to teach better, which I agree with. I think we should teach all topics better, but that's not a reason to not hold those topics, especially when you consider that again we can show from brain scans that somebody's non-gender conforming like at the age of like 6 and 7. So it's really unfortunate that we keep trying to shoehorn again this whole group of people, because you don't have to be like, you could be a boy, simply just a boy, gendered boy, sex boy, cis male, but come from a culture where there are multiple genders and just be told you're not get to allow. Like it is not just like the LGBTQ community, and it's not just about your kid. Your kid is one of many kids, and we have to create a system that works for all of them. Further, the fact that they're not your kid is one of many kids is actually has more to do with what something you were saying earlier. How effective do you think your talks are? Because the reality is when we look at the data, the vast majority of influences that a kid has don't really come from the home. Like they don't really like the negative influences, like the when we talk about cognitive behavior stuff, like if you hit your kids might grow up scared or maladjusted. Yeah, those personality things, sure, but like their ideas, their bigotry, their values, a lot of those things are actually, most of those things are usually influenced by outside forces, not the actual at the home. So I would argue, like, you may think that you're sitting down and, one of the things I used to do as a kid, I don't know how your kid, I don't want to ever talk about somebody else's kids and how their relationship is with them. But I know when I was a kid, I sure as hell could sit down at the table and talk to my super religious grandma about the Bible, even though I was already an atheist in my own head. You never know what we're actually thinking. And when we're sitting there smiling and telling you stories, all we're thinking is how can we get that extra $10 out of you so we can go to the mall? So that's just my take on it. I'm sure other people had other stuff to say.
Yeah. So mind if I chime in here?
Yeah, jump in.
Okay. So the idea, and the bill talks about this as well, about how certain things need to be age appropriate before they get discussed, which again is super vague and is left up to state standards which don't exist. So that's weird. But the main problem that I have with something like saying that a topic like gender identity or sexuality is gated behind an age is, how do you deal with kids who have, different gender, sorry, how do you deal with gender diverse youths or other members of the LGBT community who are youths who are under that age? Like they're already dealing with it, they're already living with it.
Right.
It's age appropriate to them because that's their life. Like it would be like saying, and to be fair, there's a lot of legislation that suggests this, that talking about like anti-blackness in America is age restricted, even though it's something that Black people have to live with every day of their lives.
Yeah,
since
that was the
birth.
point I was
Like,
making earlier.
yeah, exactly. So while, for a cisgendered child, like, they don't have to personally internalize and consider their sexuality because it's just, it's just the default. It's just how things go. That doesn't mean that they should be denied the, eh, even considering that someone may be gender non-conforming, especially the way this is worded. It's not even about having classes explicitly discussing these things. It's like teachers can't even refer to a trans student by their gender. They have to stick with the gender assigned at birth if you take a real reading of how it functions. Because if they talked about the child's gender identity and referred to them as their as their actual identity, then they would have to kind of teach or discuss that in the classroom to answer questions that might arise from that. And that would upset some parents. And all of a sudden there's a litigation against the school and that teacher loses their job. So yeah.
Look, dude, can I just came up with a really good analogy for this, right? What we're doing, what everybody's doing with their kids, by the way, is being the overprotective parent, right? You remember, you remember how there's always like, imagine we're at a pool, right? And we've got all these kids and they got to learn how to swim. Swimming is learning about gender, by the way. If you didn't catch the analogy. So like we've got these kids, they're at the pool, and are we really going to like not teach all of these kids how to swim because one of these kids may not know how to swim? No, we're going to throw them all in the pool. We're going to figure out which one's not swimming and jump in and save the one that's not swimming. And then everybody gets to live their lives and gets to experience the pool. But we're not going to take the pool away because one kid may or may not be able to swim. We figure out how to deal with that one and then we move on, but not the other way around. Not this bullshit, right?
In this analogy, one set of parents can't swim, so they sue the school board and shut down the pool.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And that's unfortunate. And this is why, listen, you're hurting kids, you're hurting people, you're hurting America, you're not patriots, blah. It goes on, it goes on, it goes on.
Yeah.
Don't forget they use the proceeds and a scholarship, okay, to then send their kid to the Academy of All Terrestrial Learning. Okay, all turf, no surf learning.
I mean, it's also like for how they can float legislation to control more things. I mean, it's because they
I love all these cool analogies, by the way. Keep going.
It comes with all the like you were talking, Austin, about all the other legislation. It's all just to drain the money from the public schools because that's how they can, because look, as much as they talk about school choice, like actually anytime you have to ask them about implementation, like most of their ideas, it's bullshit.
Well, on your exactly your point, it's even wider than the schools, right? It's basically capitalism 101. Now that we have all of these different topics that are banned and you can literally sue any of them, like it's basically whoever's got the money gets to decide the curriculum. I can sue a school into inefficiency. I can if imagine this. Imagine you have a school that's up and coming and it's got these kids that are all bright and nice and you like them, right? But they're in a district that may not vote for the right guy. What if that guy just goes to that district and then just sues the fuck out of it and like ruins school for all of these hopeful kids simply out of spite for
like the Bronx school, like in Ohio. Like let's say somebody goes after that school.
Yeah.
The I Promise school.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to bring up a parallel policy that is very informative of the effects and some of the harm this can have, even though it's not about schools, because this is specifically about the subject matter, and it's something where we can see a market impact that it had, and that is our "don't ask, don't tell" policy in the military. It's a very similar thing. Former policy. It was repealed, but it was the same thing. You can't talk about being something other than straight, and if you do, you're punished for it. And that did not have a positive impact on serving military members who were themselves part of the LGBT community. It also didn't have a positive impact on the hetero community. cultivated a system of sexual harassment and coercion and hostility and all kinds of like there's a lot
That's
of
really what this is. It's don't ask, don't tell for schools.
it is.
That's
100%.
exactly what this is.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, you are actually, this is another good segue. Does anyone have a closing segment or closing statement they want to throw into this before we go to the next topic?
The last time we saw people get erased like this, they did a Holocaust. That's my closing
It's true.
about the harm statement. There you
All
go.
right. We'll clip that for later. So we are going to go to our next topic of discussion. Should parents have more of a say in their school's curriculum? I'm anxious to hear what you have to say on this, Montreal player. In fact, I'm going to let you go first this time. What are your thoughts on this? Should parents have more of a say in their school's curriculum and their children's school curriculum?
I think parents actually have the option to do that. It's just everyone's so stretched. Most people, okay, in my experience, are so busy with other things, okay, that they kind of just want the school to be a daycare, okay, and maybe they come out and they're ready for higher education, okay. Honestly, one of the only. There's a lot of reasons I homeschool, but one of them that enables me to is that I can. Right. I can afford a lifestyle where my wife can stay home and do the homeschooling while I still work. A lot of people just don't have that option. Okay. They don't have the time to get involved. Okay. I think parents should be more involved. Okay. They should be more involved with their kids. At least I've sacrificed a lot of, I guess, professional opportunities for that very reason, because I prioritize these things. A lot of people don't make that choice because they don't think about it, or they can't, or whatever. Parents really should be more involved, okay, with what their kids are learning. I just don't think a lot of people have that option, or it's just not an option for most people in the society that we live in, unfortunately.
All right, Aston Mac.
Yeah, fuck no. The only reason why parents should have more agency is simply because of the failure of government and education. I think if schools were better, there'd be less issue here. But the reality is we're trying to continue to force. I know I'm going to get clipped for this because Black Lives Matter sure as hell did. But this idea that the nuclear family is some sort of bedrock of human history is something that needs to break. Like, we've raised our children through villages since time immemorial. And one of the things that we're trying to force right now is the idea that a parent knows how to educate their child best. Like, when did you learn that? I don't know. I might take it, much like I wouldn't expect you to fly a plane, just like I wouldn't expect you to perform surgery on your child. I expect that you accept that there are experts out there that know that have actually spent time doing these things. Now, the specifics of your child, there should be some inputs and outputs. There should be some stuff that you get to tell your teacher, like, hey, listen, little Timmy's got a nut allergy and he seems to really, really get scared when this happens. Okay, that's good information to give the expert in the room. But the idea, and this is where it comes from, when we created the nuclear family, we did two things. We objectified the woman and we made her subservient to the man, and then we objectified the children and made them subservient to the man. And that is what this is about. Control of the patriarchy in the household. And it's not about allowing children. Children are humans. They're little humans that have their own agency, that should be allowed to experience the world. And whatever holdups you have from your lifetime, you shouldn't put that on your kid. It's just simple as. And I know that this is coming from a place of, I don't have kids, but I'm just telling you from a place of, I had to go through the system, and like, fucked up parents are fucked up parents, dude. Like, it just, and to give that person more power to fuck a kid up more, it's not good. It's what's led to so many of the issues that we have today are from the fact that we come from broken and fucked up homes, caused by a broken and fucked up society. So we should let education and let school be a place where we can try to fix some of that stuff, smooth it out a little bit, give kids access to things that maybe they don't have at home, because again, parents aren't experts. They didn't go to school to learn how to teach kids or child psychology or any of that.
All right, thank you. We're going to go over to Fresh Faces New Ideas.
Yeah, like I said yesterday, if you want to be more involved in your kid's school, that's fine, but like, be aware that, like, unless you're have access to all the education, or you're the expert, their teachers probably know better. And that's like, if you want to complain to something about the school board about something in the curriculum, I'm relatively certain most of the curriculums are online. And if you see something that might scare you because of something you heard on the news, it's worth understanding that a lot of times that information is being taught in a way that is age appropriate, like CRT. If you live in Virginia and you found a book that's supposedly CRT, like, if your kid is, again, that I think that's like the funniest subject, because like, it's a graduate level law course, and if your fucking middle school kid is learning about it, your kid's a goddamn genius, and you should just let him be a genius and not fuck up in being a genius. So yeah, be more involved if you want to go to the meetings, but like, be aware that the professionals at least are attempting to do the best they can. And they kind of know more about subjects than we do.
All right. Next, we're going to go up to Frackle.
So I'm going to try to figure out how to, I've been trying to figure out how to say this succinctly. It's a little tricky because I actually think there's a strange marriage of the two concepts that Montreal and Aston were both discussing, which is more where I land, which is, yes, I do think that children should be raised more by a village. This is kind of a rejection of the school system as it is, and more parents, first of all, they need to have a lot more freedom of time and resources to actually be involved with their children, but not just their children. They need to be involved with the community, and those children need to be interacting with their communities more. And that should be part and parcel with education. Like, there's formal education of subjects, but also there's social intelligence and community intelligence that exists as well. And that part has been falling off more and more and more as time goes by. So kind of a weird hybrid there of a rejection of the school system as it is in its entirety.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for your opening statements. I'm going to go ahead and open up the panel here a little bit. Aston,
Yo.
do you think that our society would be better off if there was more of a village, I guess, mentality as far as raising children was concerned?
Yes, because the reason why it would be better off is because if rich people get the same thing that poor people do, it tends to improve that thing. So like, if everybody has healthcare, guess what? Healthcare in the country is going to get better because the rich people are going to be subject to it. If all kids go to public school and they get raised by a village and they use all the resources in the community, guess what? Those resources are going to be better because the rich people will have access to it. And that's where all the political power is. Like, that's what this is about. Like, yeah, if I have an actual stake, like an actual stake in the things my kid is involved in, all the different, I'm going to care about it. I'm going to put more attention on it. I'm going to wish for Frackle's future where the education system is better. I'm going to want a better education system if I'm more invested in it, and I have more involvement in it. And that's where all of this kind of comes from. I apologize for those of you that don't know. Anarkitty here, yeah, he likes to ruin broadcasts. But yeah, like I was saying though, the main thing here is that, yeah, being raised by a village allows specificity, and specificity increases the complicated nature in which we're able to deliver information, right? And we want to be able to give these kids, like, we want everybody to have the best possible environments, right? Because what the goal of education should be, it shouldn't be a daycare. It shouldn't even really just be about indoctrinating your kid into the status quo either. What it should be about raising the metrics of our society. It should be about producing more intelligent, more people that can come up with better answers and better solutions, and that can contribute back to me, baby, because I'm what's important in society. I want your kid smart so that he can cure cancer in me. I want your kid over there, Montreal, I want your kid to get nanobots so that I don't age, okay? That's what we want in society.
Wait, you're telling me that,
I got
like,
so much to say. All right, go on.
You're telling me that buying the PragerU and the new Daily Wire books for kids isn't going to help make society better? That
Oh,
watching
that's the next block. That's the next block.
Oh, okay, that's the next one.
That's the
All right.
next block. Yeah. No, Montreal, jump on in here. I want to hear what some of your thoughts have been. Got to light up first.
Is
Most
the
of
most
you got
important.
'em.
Let
I
me tell you
respect
about
the
good
fuck out of
parent.
this guy.
Let me tell you about good parenting as I smoke this joint here. All right.
Sit me down and learn me something.
Okay. Oh man, there's so many things I want to talk about. In friendly, not as counterpoints or whatever. But you guys mentioned stuff. Let me. I tried to note some of them down. Oh yeah, that's right. Okay. This idea that parents know what the fuck they're doing, okay, and kids, when kids are there to learn, it's bullshit. Okay, parents don't know. Not one fucking parent knows what the fuck they're getting into ever. All right, even the great parents, okay, don't know what the fuck they're getting into. Okay, and because it's really, to be a good parent, in my opinion, is a mindset. It's a mindset of I've always got to work at it. All right, if I just send them to school, send them to daycare and hope they come out okay, I don't think it's gonna, you get lucky maybe, okay, but I don't think it's gonna work out for you. All right, you know who does it does take a village. You know who does fucking taking a village real well? Families who think intergenerationally. You know who has a lot of those? These Christian fundamentalist type motherfuckers. Okay, they do that shit real well. All right. Thinking intergenerationally. Say what you want about their super patriarchal, whatever organization and stuff like that. Okay. You've got a lot of families pooling a lot of resources. Okay. And working together. All right. And it fucking works. All right. You know who does socialism super well? Rich people. All right. Rich people does socialism super well. Okay. Inside our group. All right. That's what it is, man. That's what it is. If you ever have kids one day, okay, please make them not fucking hate you. All right. Make them not do whatever you can so you can work together as adults in the future. Those are future adults. Okay. And if you train them right, they'll be fucking smart. Imagine having a cohort of smart adults in your fucking corner like this. All right. Okay. That's a recipe for fucking success. All right.
Hey, Montreal, quick question. Are you suggesting that evangelical Christians and rich people are aware of their grouping and take their shared interest in mind when they take actions for the betterment of their group, not just them?
Yeah,
like they have
they're doing a lot,
consciousness.
and they're doing a lot better than their counterparts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay?
that's
They're
true.
doing socialism better than the socialists.
They're also
They have a lot
doing,
more resources.
They're also
That's
doing
true.
what's it called? It's where you're like chosen because you're a minority. They do that really well. That's how Mike Pence became vice president. He was I forget the term. It's
Affirmative action.
affirmative action. Yeah. Mike Pence, just like Joe Biden, were the affirmative action vice presidents. Like Mike Pence directly because he made the evangelicals feel better about voting for a guy who went against literally all of their pretend beliefs, and Joe Biden because he made white people feel better about voting for a black guy. Like, yes, I
knew Pence was my nigga.
And I think Kane would fall into that as well for Hillary Clinton.
Kane was it's a little bit like the moderate. He was like the most milquetoast dude ever. Like I think he's still a senator. I don't even know. Like he disappeared faster than Marco Rubio did after he lost the primary.
So he was just there to carry a state.
There is one thing I want to just add into the conversation, not as an opposition to anything, but just as an addition. I tried to craft these questions the best that I could because I had a specific reason in mind, which was thinking about the audience that comes to independent thought. I have an audience that is mostly either like somewhat apolitical or very casual political observers, but these are, in my opinion, the majority of people in our country. People who are very casual with the news, very casual in taking legislation, hearing anything about what's going on in the world. And I think a lot of those people get manipulated by the powers that be, and so, for instance, what I mean by that, when you hear about this, like, don't say gay bill, or when you hear about these anti-trans bills, or when you hear about the just like sweet, I think it's the word that Aston used before, about all the different bills coming down the pipeline right now, there is this idea that, like, these GOP lawmakers are trying to essentially like protect, children. They're trying to protect the nuclear family. They're trying to protect the normal way of life. And so I'm happy that we're able to kind of like have these conversations really just out in the open like this, to more or less break down some of these ridiculous, narratives being pushed right now. And one of them that is, I hear just time and time again, is that like, oh, we need parents to be more involved in the school system. But what that really is trying to say is that we really need parents to be checking in on every single thing being taught, because if there's anything that's not being taught, we want the parents to be more involved in complaining and going to school board meetings, into suing the schools. It's basically an additional like force of people to be constantly being the overseers if anything comes through the educational pipeline that they don't like. And I'm assuming that will eventually rear its ugly head with more discussions about anything involving gender identity, sexual orientation, anything involving, teaching Black history, systemic racism. I just feel like that's inevitable, and it's really insidious that it's being, like pushed as, parents being more involved in school.
So,
you want them more involved, okay, to attack the school system, but not so involved that they become a part of it, that they become part of that community. You don't want that kind of involvement, okay? A lot of
You also don't want the ones fixing it involved either. Like,
sorry,
if you
that's I'm talking because I'm joking from the perspective of some malicious actor, by the way. Those are actually the things you do want. You do want them to be more involved with the community. Sorry, fresh faces, new ideas. Go ahead.
Don't worry about it. No, but like Desmond, you're right. Like, the people they want involved in this, they don't want the people on this panel involved. Like, if we showed up at a school meeting, we'd be told that we're trying to indoctrinate your kids with wokeness. Like, if I did what fucking Matt Walsh did, where I had my kids as a private school and I went to a local school board meeting to rant about whatever the fuck he was complaining about because he's a goddamn lunatic, that wouldn't be cheered on in the way he's cheered on. They would be like, look at this I'd be on like libs of TikTok.
So can I chime in here?
Yeah, really quick. I think Ass has been trying to get in here first. So go Ass and then Freckle.
Okay, I just wanted to jump in and say the one thing I want to kind of comment about this, and I want to be like very clear. Don't sit here and think this shit is new. Okay, maybe that's why I'm a little like kind of put off, like not really caring about the fact that, because I know what this is. We've seen it a million times. The Think of the Children is literally a character on The Simpsons that's been running since 1989. Okay, like this is a tactic that they've been using since time immemorial. When we pretend like we don't know the exact effects, the exact causes, what they're doing. Matter of fact, for everything that you think goes crazy, that's crazy in federal legislature, like in Congress and the Senate, multiply that by 10, and then you've got the state Congress and the state Senates. Like, this is stuff that's been going on forever. This new iteration, maybe this is the first time you heard about it because we have internet and now everybody realizes what Florida is. But like, Florida's been pulling this shit forever. Like, I mean, I remember when Jeb Bush took over our fucking state and had his way with our education. And it's not just us, it's everywhere. So maybe this is good. Maybe it put some spotlights on it. Maybe, again, you normies that weren't aware of this can now be aware. But like, every decade, without a question, the groups that they will attack inside of schools are going to be the academics, the racial minorities, and the LGBTQ community. Every fucking decade. There's some new bill, there's some new iteration, there's some new book they're banning. It's always these groups, okay? They don't want them to exist. They don't want your kids to have them. They will continue to spin this as though that this is some form of indoctrination, that being close to minorities means you're going to catch a hot case of the blacks. You know what I mean? It's the same old story. So at some point we have to, like, what's going on right now is there's a shift of power going on in the United States, right? We have a lot of demographics that are changing. We have a lot of, for the first time in history, we aren't the most racist place on earth, right? We're accepting interracial marriage. We're accepting gay marriage popularly, like among the people, more than ever before. And this stuff, this is the battle scars, right? This is what it looks like while that stuff is changing and that stuff shifting. You got to fight against it, but don't treat it like it's unique. Don't pretend like that we haven't seen this shit before. That's all I'm saying.
So
I had another thing to say about what all you guys were saying.
Yeah, let Freckle go. Let Freckle go.
Let
Yeah, no,
Freckle
Freckle,
go?
you're next.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, sorry about that.
okay, so two things that I wanted to touch on. One was kind of building on what Montreal player and Fresh Faces was saying, and then something related to what Aston was saying. The first is so yes, what looking at this from a systems and procedures perspective, this is not a matter of do they want more parents involved or do they not want more parents involved. This is using legislation to define the specific type of parental involvement that they want and define the specific things that they will allow parents to influence. And that needs to be touched on because it's not like a binary about should parents be involved in the education system and what's taught. It's should parents specifically have the ability to claw back things that make them feel icky, and deny not only their children but everyone else's children the ability to learn about those things. That's actually what the legislation does.
So what you're saying, Frackle, is it weirdly enough makes it a very specific thing that they're going to target, right? No engineer parent gets to go back and sue their school over their math curriculum. It's only for this group of people. Thank you for framing that. I got it. Lasered
in. And the other part is to Aston's point. This is not only is it not the first kinds of these bills, like there used to be a public pools all over the place, and then desegregation happened, and there was a big freak out about, oh, women and children shouldn't be around Black people. You don't see public pools anymore, and that wasn't because public pools became illegal, but it was because policies and these culture panic freakouts phased them out. And that's kind of what this is doing. Like there may not be that many court cases that actually arise because of this, but it sends a message and it swings their base into this anti-LGBT frenzy, where they just attack any such thing as indoctrination and save the children and whatnot. And it's not going to be the last one either. If this bill goes through, if it is perceived as successful in winning points on that culture war, this type of framework about giving parents the ability to deny teaching about something, we'll see that incorporated into like anti-CRT bills or other things, or anything that questions American exceptionalism, or anything that teaches about non-Christian religions in schools. Yeah, so those are the two things I wanted to bring up.
Perfect. Actually, just perfect segue into our final topic. We're just going to jump right into it, which is teaching children about sexual orientation and gender identity, quote unquote, indoctrination. We're going to start again with Montreal player. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, of course, it's indoctrination. It's indoctrination to a set of values and ideals that you may or may not agree with, but it's indoctrination nonetheless. Just because you think it's a good thing doesn't mean it's not indoctrination. So it's absolutely indoctrination. You want to accept the fundamental idea, okay, that no matter the person's sexual orientation or gender identity, that they're still human beings. All right, it's a doctrine. Okay, they want to teach. Maybe you think it's good. I hope you do. All right, but it's still a doctrine they want to teach. It's absolutely indoctrination, and I hate to say it, but if you are of a belief that there's something fundamentally wrong with that, then it's going to hit you emotionally the same way as I don't know, doing something despicable in school or teaching something despicable in school. It's going to hit you emotionally the same way. I can't control what other people's core values are or anything, but yeah. So that's it. The only reason I guess I don't have a problem with, we get it here in Canadian schools. Like I said, we have classes. It's all over the place. These kind of values are all over the place. It's absolutely indoctrination. The reason I'm okay with it is because I'm okay with those values. It doesn't trample on anything I believe on. But if I really had a fucking problem with it, all right, and some people do, and I'm looking at you, Muslims, all right, people make a stink. People make a stink, and things get removed. All right, yeah, there you go.
Next, we're gonna go down to Aston Mac.
Yo, is this indoctrination? That's a hard question because it's kind of, we have to decide what indoctrination actually means. The only reason why I would stray away, because I understand the idea that it's the passing of values. I understand about the subtext of this information, but at the end of the day, it makes it very hard for me to put it in this category because it's literally just an explanation of truth. They never said that you had to say that, everyone can kumbaya and you need to be nice to gay people. It's just saying gay people exist. They never said that, like, you need to make sure to gender everybody correctly. They're just saying that, like, gender is a social construct created by human beings that has a complicated history over time. I mean, these are literally just the truths. These are the objective truths. And are there a set of values that you gain from learning the truth? Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously. But to me, indoctrination is the restriction of truth in order to manipulate the narrative, not the access of truth in order to, like, understand. And so that's where I get into the, like, is this indoctrination? Now, I could hear a convincing argument to say that, like, hey, listen, all forms of creating of frameworks, of mental frameworks for people, are forms of indoctrination. Okay, but then I think the word loses its utility. I think that we're not really talking about anything anymore. At that point, we're just saying everything is everything is everything. And that to me kind of loses, like, the utility in the word indoctrination. That's why I specifically, and again, people can disagree and they can have their different viewpoints. I specifically think indoctrination is when you restrict the truth to create a narrative or to play into a narrative that has falsehoods, versus, like, again, just explaining to somebody that, like, it's like explaining that apples fall from trees. Is that me scientifically indoctrinating you? Is that where we're at with this right now? Because that's what I'm starting.
No,
Go
but
ahead.
Hold on.
saying the
No.
truth can only come from, like, data or scientists, okay, and that's the only outcomes that will ever lead to any, or sorry, those are the only methods that will ever lead to any good outcome. Okay, but there's other ways to look at it. Okay, go ahead.
Arguing that.
No. But on that point, to say that, but what if we do objectively say, like, I can't say that data is the only way, but I can say that data is the most reliable way, which I think is what's taught, right? That empirically, like, data makes the best predictions. That's why we continue to use it. That's why we use science and not religion to build literally everything around us. It's because science, by its nature, and let's be clear, science is an action. It's the indexing of objective information in order to form models that create predictions with higher and higher levels of accuracy.
Oh wow, someone's been indoctrinated.
Wait. Let's not interrupt each other's opening statements, please.
Oh well, no. We were vibing. I should be done anyway. I've been talking for way too long.
Fresh faces, new ideas.
So,
go ahead and go with
I
your
like
opening
Montreal.
statement.
He's a good guy.
Yes, this is indoctrination. The only acceptable form of non-indoctrination is when Ben Shapiro creates a fake Disney company, and they have Daily Wire Kids, and PragerU Kids is also no longer indoctrination, because if it's right wing, it's acceptable, and if it's a tick toward the center, or if it's not, like, immediate authoritarian, which is kind of accepted depending on which one it is, it's not indoctrination. But if you're giving people human rights and they're a minority, it's fucking indoctrination. We cannot accept it.
Okay, thank you so much, and go up to Frackle.
It 100% depends. This is not talking about specific curriculum that's being taught. This is about outlawing some things from being discussed in schools. To me, that is indoctrination, because it is removing concepts from even being discussed in schooling. Now, indoctrination, per definitions that I understand, is teaching something to someone to the point that they cannot criticize or or question it. Now, not referring to someone as their preferred gender, or accepting another, in this classroom, the teacher accepting that other sexualities exist, to me is not indoctrination, because they're not actually like browbeating every other student that you must, view things this way. It's just, they're just extending that courtesy to those students, or accepting the discussion about their parents in the classroom context. Now, saying these subjects are absolutely off the table and must not be discussed under legal penalty, to me, is indoctrination, because it leaves no room for discussion or question.
Okay, well, thank you so much for everyone's opening statements. Now, Montreal player and Aston Mac, you are free to go back and forth.
Well, I there is one thing I kind of want to bring up, because I don't think so. This is what you brought us here for. Me and Frackle live in the state, so we can talk about. And this isn't me trying to pull some sort of like appeal to authority or anything like that. This is actually, but you said bring the anecdotes. Let's talk about the other half of what happens in Florida schools. Let's talk about the fact that I pray in school regularly. Like, I prayed in school regularly. They moments of silence were you were expected to pray to God. You were expected all the time. It didn't matter if you were part of a sports team. It didn't matter if you were in band. It didn't matter if you were in academic team. Like, you prayed. You also, like, the whole husband and wife thing is shoved down your throat in schools. You do fake husband and wife activities all the fucking time in school. You do these weird gender role and cultural normative things. Like, this is what I mean when I say, like, I grew up, I can understand when I look across the aisle and I have to, at a counter protest, and I've said this before, see a gay Black Confederate, right? And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Oh, wait, I grew up in Florida. I know how that happens. Like, I grew up thinking that, the South fought for states' rights because that's what my teachers told me. I grew up thinking that, like, the only religions out there were Christianity and the other Abrahamic religions, and because that's all my teachers talked about. I grew up thinking that transgender people and gender and all this gender stuff didn't exist back in the 90s, when the reality is, once again, people have been living for thousands of years with these concepts, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating because everybody wants to get their sound bites about what can't be taught in schools. What are you actually teaching in schools? Why don't we ever take this level of scrutiny to the majority in this? Because this is what this is once again about. This is about the power differentials and the fact that the one cis, white, heteronormative person is made uncomfortable by the existence of people outside of his identifiers, right? Their stories don't get to be real to him. And that's a problem. That creates identity issues that we've already talked about before. That creates that's issues of self-worth. That creates issues, like, I can't even begin to tell you the amount of trauma this sort of stuff imposes and how it makes hate normalized in Florida culture. I mean, walk down the street and, like, every other street's named after a dude that owned me. So, like, I mean, how do you think things get this way?
Is Florida the state that did the you can't hurt white people's feeling bill?
Yes.
Or was that Texas?
No, the anti-CRT bill is about, you're not allowed to make people feel bad for the racial, for anything about their race or their ancestors. And then further, it goes further than schools. You also can't have those, and to be fair, these are stupid anyway, those corporate things. Those
the Robert DeAngelo's.
Yeah, you can't do racial sensitivity training or anything like any sort of discussion like that is bad. But if you ever look at those bills, they like to use those as the eye catchers to go, okay, you'll agree with this. But if you ever really look into those bills, they go a little further always, and it always just turns into, you can't talk about race stuff if it makes people feel bad at all.
I think other states have also adopted these recently. I think
there was like a
Texas,
bill
Oklahoma, Idaho,
Yeah.
they've all adopted similar laws now.
Yeah, once they see that it works, they're like, oh yeah, we'll get on board with that.
Yeah, we're the test state.
We also have a very robust anti-protest bill where
Mhm.
we've
Yeah, that was
even
bad.
legalized people driving over protesters with their cars. So that's fun.
And it's the
Fucking
little things
hell.
in those bills, because that's the eye-catching thing. Everybody goes, oh, people driving over protesters, that's a big deal. And then they ignore the parts, they forget about the parts where it says if you're actually if you're arrested or put in false imprisonment, you can't sue your city. You can't sue
Right.
the city for that. Or if you as a municipality, we cannot vote to change our city's budget on the police right now. We can't,
Yeah.
because the state restricted it.
Or
in
the fact that
Louisiana,
a
where
group of 10 people or more is considered a
That's-
riot,
yeah.
which is a felony now.
Yeah.
Like,
and now it's what's probably coming next is based on this Louisiana ruling that said that McKesson was responsible for the actions of the people at the rally that he was in charge of.
Hmm.
That they found him criminally liable for those actions, which if you just expand that to what Florida's already done, that will criminalize protesting too. If you have a couple people being a fuckhead, now everyone's going to jail in those bills.
Now let's combine them all together, like you were saying in Florida. Wow, that's a really cool pride you're having over there. Or is that a protest because we just passed that bill? Guess I can run you over. Oh shit, you can't sue the city because we let this happen. Moving on. These are how these things are combined and used and weaponized against us. I know, because like I literally visually saw the counter protesters, the Trumpsters running around with dummies, like crash test dummies on the front hoods of their cars, like telling us that they can hit us when they want. Like it's
Yep.
disgusting.
Was the guy who shot at the march with the crossbow, was that Utah or was that in Florida?
I think that was Utah. I don't think that was here. Let me
A
check.
very specific question to ask.
No,
Yeah,
this is like some like weird crazy shit that seems like a Florida thing that would happen, that a guy would just start like he drove up into a Black Lives Matter protest and like got out with a one of those compound crossbows and started firing at people. And then they were like like he was being defended by right wingers when he was on the news because they kicked the shit out of him for doing that.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure about
It's Utah.
what
It's Salt Lake City, Utah.
Yeah, so the last thing that I want to say about this, as before we kind of like start like wrapping this up, is I've also heard this too. When I was speaking about before about like having people like come to me and talk about these certain issues, you know, I've heard that exact word be thrown around, indoctrination, and it feels like such a subjective word. Like what exactly is the indoctrination? Is it just something that is challenging the existing power structure? Is that what the issue is here? Because I don't see how it should be a problem that we are teaching that a certain class of people exists, which is essentially what's trying to be normalized right now. Is the existing power structure trying to push back and saying, hey, no, we need this to continue to be strange and different and weird and not normal. And I think that they feel threatened right now. So they're throwing around words like, oh, you're trying to indoctrinate our youth, which is, again, something that, you know, Ben Shapiro is trying to normalize right now as he is starting up his, $300 million venture to produce, you know, children's programming to avoid wokeness, which again, I just think is a whole different conversation. But
how are you
in my
gonna
opinion,
avoid wokeness? You're gonna like have characters that are like deliberately homophobic.
Yes.
You're gonna
Fascism.
celebrate them. Like,
Woke
hey,
is
you know
such a
what?
stupid
Good
word that's
job
been-
good job on stepping on the gays in that one, Billy. You know,
They're
it
gonna
doesn't
make
make
them the
any
bad
sense because
guys.
they've
Look,
turned the word woke into a damn umbrella term for anything that's not straight and white. It's so
Or
fucking
capital.
obnoxious that I honestly cannot handle it. But
Can I,
this idea, you can in a second, yeah. But when we're talking about this idea that like, oh, we can't be teaching our children anything woke, it's just you don't want to teach anything that's not straight and white. And I'm just so
Yeah.
tired of them getting away with that narrative.
the
go ahead,
indoctrination by school, like this right-wing indoctrination is like one of my favorite topics. First off, with the Ben Shapiro thing, you have to remember like one of the key things that motivates Ben Shapiro, especially on this topic, for like creating movies and stuff. Like he has his little movie studio. They did the school shooter one. They did the one when the woman was trapped in the closet. I think he's doing something with Gina Carano. The thing that's motivating him is that he wanted to be a Hollywood kid, like he wanted to be a movie producer in Hollywood, and he sucked at it, and he failed out, and that's why he hates Hollywood. Like that is a key thing to remember about Ben Shapiro, is he always wanted to be the cool Hollywood kid, and that he just wasn't. The other thing that this is,
the
it's
Ben
like
Shapiro Network, where everything's canceled.
That's literally like his video talking about like the Disney stuff is one of the most homophobic things I've ever seen. It's him basically saying that the existence of gay people is destroying America. Like he has a couple videos like this, but it's his most recent one. The other thing is like they're not the only ones doing it, but they're like the most established. Like PragerU has it, and everyone if you're not like super crazy, you're aware PragerU is like kind of a joke. I
would hope. But
they like, especially
depressing
after
me.
their pro slavery video, which is like an insane thing that existed. They have their PragerU kids. That thing is wild. Then there's like the ones you haven't heard about. There's the Ashley St. Clair's, who's working with Jack Posobiec to create the children's book, and those are crazy as well. And then you have other children's books that are coming out like with like Dennis Prager. It's always they're always coming. There was a commercial for one of them, and it was like how to not teach your kid about, or like how to teach your kid that communism is bad. And the commercial for it is like the kid reads a book, and then he's like a Soviet super soldier. He's trying to take all the cookies. It's a wild commercial. Like this stuff is
It's a book full of like labor memes and workout tips.
yeah, it's like insane. This stuff, they're like, yes, this is totally acceptable for us to indoctrinate your children in. It's like, as long as we're doing it, it's okay. And then the thing was, they funnel these things. Like they build up the fever, and then like currently they're angry at Disney. So they build up the fever at Disney to make Disney feel bad, and obviously Disney will comply at least a little bit, because even their wokeness is set for a corporate base, so that they could chop the woke characters out to like sell it to like Saudi Arabia and shit, or Alabama.
Yeah, Disney is very vehemently pro anti-gay. Like they're very much in locally, they're always against the gay movements and LGBTQ things. It's only for commercials that they put the rainbow stuff on.
Right. And then what they do is they build the anger of that. So obviously Disney starts acquiescing, because the one thing conservatives in America are really good at is bitching and crying. And then the other thing is they start funneling the money into these type of like Ben Shapiro outfits, so that people get further indoctrinated and you get further bubbled. Like there was just a study, there was a Twitter thread about this, about a study done about like people who they took people who would watch Fox News, and they had them watch like CNN for like 7 hours a week for like a month, and the difference in what they learned is just like staggering. I haven't looked through all the data on it, but it's just like a wild study. Like it's not just what's being covered, it's what's not being covered. So like these type of things, this is like what Montreal Player and some of the other guys have talked about, is it's who the money is going to for this shit. It's like fucking wild. And they're just like, it's so hypocritical. And then my favorite, I don't know where else to bring this up. I got to talk about the Lord Bober tweet. I don't know who saw this, but she basically had a tweet that said, you have to be 21 years old to be like legally allowed to come out as gay. And it's just like so insane. It's literally what a child would think of. And the funny thing is, like, Lauren Boebert, like, we make fun of her for being a high school dropout. She was a high school dropout because she got pregnant at 19. Like that's when she dropped out of school.
Lauren Boebert is hot. Okay. Brunette MILF with glasses. That's exactly what I search. Okay. I can't deny it. I'm sorry.
Well, look, you actually have that, and Sarah Palin's coming in next in 22.
Is Sarah Palin good, but getting kind of old, but I'd still hit that,
I'd hate fuck that.
I'm
sorry.
Woo! Okay.
Can I jump
So
in?
just really quickly
I've done
here,
my
everyone, I think we're going to
bench
go ahead and go into closing statements, actually.
Please, can I make one additional statement? Because I think this is an important one.
Sure.
Just bear me out. So Montreal Player, you played it as a joke earlier about, what are we going to do? Like have movies where like people are homophobic, etc. But I actually want you to think about this. There are a ton of movies, even Disney movies, where villains have very commonly been queer coded, and you triumph over this character that's exhibiting traits that are stereotypically associated with queer people. You can look at Scar, you can look at Jafar, you can look at Ratcliffe, Ursula. You can look outside of Disney to characters even like the Moriarty in the recent
Right. The villains aren't Chads. They're not Chad villains.
Right. So, but
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt really quickly, unfortunately. I think something that was just said broke TOS. So let's
Oh.
just try to be a little bit more careful because I just got thrown offline on both platforms.
Oh, was it me? Oh, I'm so
I'm
sorry.
not sure.
Oh, I'm still on.
I didn't.
So let's just be a little more
Yeah,
careful
I'm
what
still
we're
here.
saying. But please go ahead, Frackle.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, that is it's very common in media to have queer coded villains that have to be triumphed over, and you don't see like try and think of a LGBT lead protagonist. They're very uncommon. They do exist, but they're extremely uncommon. So while you were joking about that being an effort in the media to cement bigotry, it's a real phenomenon that's been happening and continues to happen. You see it along racial lines as well, where Black people are overwhelmingly in media portrayed as criminal or as coming up from, the best thing they can aspire to is to overcome their nature and become cops in a lot of movies. Or where Latinos are coded as involved in drugs. Like these tropes do exist in media today, and that needs to be challenged and shut down.
Can I
Okay,
also
so
make a comment on that real quick?
Yeah.
There's no way, if we're talking about Ben Shapiro, they're going to code these things. It's
yeah.
going to be like a gay trans person trying to turn your kids gay and trans. Like they're not even going to attempt to code them. So like we joke that it would be a like beat up the gay people, but it's going to be that.
Yeah.
Like it's
okay,
going
like,
to be
like
in your
the
face.
evil
about it.
person has a death, or sorry, no, is a gay ray. Okay, and he's gonna shoot at the world. It's gonna turn everyone into non-heterosexuals. Okay, and that's why Billy the hero has to stop them.
We joke about it, but the spin, like you're like, oh, that's crazy. Like, why would he make it so obvious? But I bet you the spin is like the background to that gay character is like he was mistreated for growing up, and he's taking it out to make everybody gay. And you see, that's the opposite. He's taking his trauma and he's playing the victim. And that's why they're going to make him it's actually going to be like that. Like we joke, we kid, but we know that's going to happen, right?
I mean, that was
Yeah,
his
they're not
shooting
going to be
movie.
subtle because they're never at this point. There's no point in them doing dog whistles anymore. Like
Yeah.
big companies like Disney and stuff do the dog whistles because they kind of always have. But like the actual propagandists, they're not going to be doing.
Hey, Shark. Oh, sorry.
They know that they're going to be doing no propaganda.
Yeah, I think we're going to go into closing statements now. We're going to start over onto my left with Montreal Player. Just your final thoughts on this whole discussion, and then don't forget to plug yourself, letting the people know where they can find you at outside of these panels.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt anybody. I guess the only thought I had is that I mean, I still think it's indoctrination. Just I agree with it, right? You can one of the I guess so they were talking about indoctrination being restricting knowledge. One of the things that I feel is rampant over the scientism / progressive I guess movement, all right, is this abandonment of tradition as if it has no value and needs to be shot out the window. And it's not true. These are a lot of tradition comes from rituals, mores that have come through societies that have survived, all right, and in whatever misguided truths they have, okay, somehow it led to survival, and survival is really the only thing that matters in this universe, all right, as far as any organic organism. Okay, so they're not to be, tradition isn't to just be shit on, okay, for the sake of shitting on it in the name of progressivism. There's a lot of, I guess, encoded valuable knowledge in there, and the environment's changing, so some of it needs to go, but it's not by I guess on principle it shouldn't just go just because it's tradition, all right, and I think these are the kind of things that are being indoctrinated into our kids today in modernity, as far as restricting knowledge and kind of ignoring things that maybe contain truths that you didn't really that don't really fit into your framework at this point. So in that way, that's my pro indoctrination argument, but I was having fun listening to you guys, so I forgot to say it. Anyways, thank you. Montreal Player, twitch.tv. That's it. Aston Mac, I remember seeing you from Gay Superman panel with Heem. That's right. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Next, we're going to go over to Frackle.
Oh, okay. So, right. So, as a closing statement, I feel quite a bit for the LGBT youth here in Florida who have to face classrooms where they can't even discuss their existence or potentially their parents' existence. Um, and I actually want to give a little bit of a shout out to some groups: Prism, the Zebra, um, the Sage House, the LGBTQ Center. These are still, very, very functional, um, very needed community centers that support our LGBT youth here, the Orlando Youth Alliance. Yeah, and like their work is going to be needed more than ever as their existence is erased from the classroom and hatred towards them is further normalized.
Okay. And where can people find you at outside of
Oh,
here?
right. So I am transitioning off of Twitch, but I am on twitch.tv/Freckle, but I'm primarily going to be on youtube.com/Freckle, where I am going to be putting out video essays. I'm working on one. It is taking longer than I expected, but I really want to get it right. It is on the history of police and prisons in the context of the call for abolition of them. So it's going through, 200 years of history and how it's just they were fundamentally designed to be harmful and that they need to be rejected.
All right. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to go down to Fresh Faces, New Ideas.
Yeah, I'm Fresh Faces, New Ideas. I know I was like in the dark for half of this one because I had to do it in a different room, but yeah, this bill is dog shit. The movement surrounding it is like 1980s bigotry, and they're coming out for saying crazy shit that's going to get people hurt and killed, and that's their goal because they don't give a shit about them. Anyway, I'm Fresh Faces New Ideas. You can find me at twitch.tv/Fresh Faces New Ideas. I'm going to be streaming around 7 p.m. EST for the rest, at least through Friday of this week. I think that's probably how it'll be for a while. I know my schedule's been changing a lot, but if you follow me on Twitter at Faces Ideas, you can find out when my schedule is. But yep, I talk politics and it's a good time. So y'all should come join.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Aston Mac.
Okay, so let's just do a quick wrap up on this bill so that we can all kind of get together on this. Let's be honest about what's happening here, okay? Once again, we stand at a point in humanity where we see the atrocities of bigotry and cultural erasure coming from the white supremacist, heteronormative hegemony that exists around the world. I could throw capitalist or whatever buzzword you want in there, but it's all true. What this bill does is it changes the discussion. And I want to be very clear about that. We are now arguing whether or not these transgender kids, whether or not these extra gendered kids, whether or not these LGBTQ kids, whether they exist, and that exists for the minorities, that exists for people that believe in alternate forms of economies like communism. We're actually fundamentally rooting them out in such a way that North Korea would be proud. No, like if any other country in the world, you got told that they literally said that X group of people doesn't exist, like you would raise an eyebrow. You would immediately scorn that country. You would call them backwards, primitive. Well, look at what we're doing here. We imagine, if you will, a world where white people didn't get to exist until fourth grade, where until fourth grade, there were no presidents taught, there were no paintings shown, there were no teachers of fair skin allowed in the classroom. And then you start to get the idea of the world that we're living in for the minorities of this world. And it's disgusting. And one of the things that Montreal said that was really important, I want to stick on this, was it's about survival. We can all admit that, listen, white hegemony, you won. Okay, you won the culture wars. You got to be the dominant culture around the world. But if we're going to survive as humanity, we need to stop doing things that fundamentally limit our education and limit our agency as people. The less agency people and children have, the less benefit we get out of them. And at a time when we're coming across the climate crisis, the economic crisis, the all the crises that exist in the world, we need to be squeezing the absolute most out of our kids. We need to be giving them all of the tools so that they can deal with the future that lies ahead of them, because boys and girls, it's going to be a messy one. All right, it's going to be messy, and the fact that we're sitting here arguing whether or not that gay kids get to exist in school when in the state that ironically will disappear by 2045 is well, it's maddening a little bit. And as I often say, it's getting harder and harder to breathe out here. If you like what I said, if you like what I do, my name's Aston Mac. You can check me out on Aston Mac TV on Twitch. I'm on Twitter as Mac Aston. As I always say, I am the only Aston Mac in the country. I swear, if you cannot find me, you're not trying hard enough. Okay. I say some pretty cool things. I do some pretty cool things. Mainly what my channel here is focused on is actually showing you guys what praxis looks like and putting a camera on activism. Last week, matter of fact, you can join me in this chat over here, Frackle, crashing a town hall with a corrupt state attorney. And things of that nature. So how do you turn, yeah, exactly, I remember. So how do you turn all these angry feelings that you have, all these rage against the machine that you feel, into actual political capital and action? Well, sit around, let's chat about it back on my show. Thanks so much, Independent, for having me.
Of course. Thank you to everyone who watched today, who is watching in the future. If you liked this video, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, subscribe to everyone else's channel. If you want some links to any of the panelists, all of their links will be in the episode description if you're watching this on YouTube in the future. I'm hoping to do a lot more of these panels. So if you liked what you saw here today, definitely drop a comment, tell me what you thought, and definitely subscribe. You know, the final thing that I want to say about all this is, you know, I think right now this conversation, you know, around the country is trying to be, you know, just there's a masquerade around this, trying to say that, you know, we're trying to protect children from conversations they're not ready for. But really what we're doing is further marginalizing a group of people who is already marginalized enough. So I just want to kind of like hopefully take the mask off that a little bit by having conversations like this. I know that a lot of people are kind of casual with their news consumption. So I thought it was great to have more in-depth conversations about this stuff that we're all just like passively hearing about throughout the news, you know, on a weekly basis. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.